Interesting start tonight. Hopefully, everybody can hear. Feel free to let me know if all the audio's good, etc., etc. Had to do some last minute changes because streaming can be hard. But this is a great Pantheon plus U2 following the Parting the Veil, because we get to talk about mastery. But first, let me introduce my amazing co-hosts. First up, we've got Mr. RedBeardFlynn.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see you.
All right. Then we've got the one and only ManOfRohan.
Right, and look at this. Looks good, right?
Yeah, ManOfRohan is sporting.
It came today. I'm glad it did.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Rants the turnip. All right, so hopefully we can keep them up on the screen tonight. But anyway, mastery. I'm definitely a little scattered here. So first time talking about this in about 2 years, if memory serves. So any first thoughts for you guys while I fix yet another thing here?
Sure. I mean, it's interesting because it sounds a lot like a system that is taking from things like EverQuest. It's taking from World of Warcraft. It's a system that I like hearing about. I don't think it's necessarily a system that's going to make the game stand out. But it's one that I think that could add just a little bit of extra, just that little bit of, extra dopamine hit, when you get a mastery point while waiting for the next level or something like that. It feels like a system that will just kind of fill in.
Compliments more than is like the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree that it isn't super flashy because people have done things. There's AAs, there's lots of other sorts of alternate, or what Joppa called secondary advancement. But it's a little bit cost of doing business, rite of passage, whatever you want to say. It kind of needs to be there, especially to support all of the other progression that they're trying to have, and the reinforcing the identity of the classes. He mentioned that as well, and that's our opportunity to both make ourselves more as a class more separated from others, but then also we there's a lot of choice in there on where we're going to spend our mastery points within there. So I mean, it's normal, but I think we're going to see more and more on how they break those down, and what we can choose from. But I felt like tonight was like lots and lots of secrets came out, or beans, as some
details,
might say.
Actual like details and context.
Yeah. And I think that some people I think believe may be a little bit disappointed with how linear it seems as a system. It's you get this point, then this point, then this point, and there's obviously questions around the system. But one thing I just would want to say is that there hasn't been a alternate system that hasn't been changed in MMOs. Whether it's World of Warcraft or EverQuest, they've all received different types of updates and tweaks as they've gone through. And I believe that, it's one of those things that it's the way that it's going to be, the way that it is at launch is not necessarily how it will be in a couple of years after launch or something like that.
True. Right. It did seem like Joppa was pretty stalwart on the whole, like, we don't want builds, like, at least as far as, the whole character. Like, it sounds like we'll have builds where it's more, well, your limited action set, right? Obviously. But also builds just based on what have you prioritized. That's really what this whole system is about. It's linear progression, but it's like, you can't do it all at once. So what do you think is important? That's kind of what I get from it.
Yeah. And I also don't want the thousands and thousands of AAs like he was talking about. For me, that just is a paralyzing kind of an idea that there's just too many things to choose. I don't want 40 types of jam on there. I just need a few, from the grocery store. I need a few to choose from. I think most humans actually are that way. But then, if I learn my class and I'm doing really well, I'm going to know those things. I'm going to be able to differentiate. So I'm of two minds. So just don't listen to anything I just said because it canceled itself out.
I'm sorry, but I can't do that. You say good things often. So,
and I think that kind of gets down to the growth of an MMO. And I believe, and this is a little bit off topic, but in the last stream, the gameplay stream, it was talking about numbers and how numbers are starting small. And I think that's a very important thing because of just how psychology works with numbers. And so talking about thousands of AAs is very daunting. But EverQuest didn't start with thousands of AAs. It's at thousands of AAs now, 23 years after it launched. I mean, I guess it was 21 years since AAs came in. So starting small gives you more room as the MMO grows to expand on the system as well. And you can expand on choices and things later as well too. I think it's just it sounds like a good basis for the system where it is going to be adding something to the game, but it is not going to be defining for the game or your class.
Well, thanks for defining bloat for us. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm super excited to talk to folks.
And actually,
so many things to talk about.
For that reason, it looks like our guy Finn here is a bit on a time budget, so we'll sneak him in first. I think this is going to be good. I really enjoy talking to Finn, so make sure you're unmuted, bud, and I'll drag you right in. Hey, man.
Hey, everybody. How y'all doing?
Hello.
Good.
Pretty good. That was a decent amount of stuff. What did you think, man?
I've always been a big fan of the mastery system, what they presented it as, what they want to do. I'll take, because it's me, somewhat controversial view that I disagree with Joppa in it not being able to be a specialization tool. I would have liked to see the system maybe eventually be used as a tool for differentiation as opposed to just a straight power curve. I know Joppa doesn't apparently like specializations, but for me, I like choice. As you and I have talked about this stuff before, I like meaningful choice. I like players having the ability and option to differentiate themselves from other players. So I was hoping, that the mastery system would be a tool to do that. Now, he did mention that there may be some things that may lean in that direction. The option to have the highest tier mastery maybe be a choice. The idea that you can branch out a little bit at a certain level, but ultimately, it's definitely leaning as a power progression thing. So that's my only real big complaint about it. I do want to explore the system. Excited to hear it's coming in testing, so that's a good thing.
Actually, Tro Dude beat me to the punch here. So with that in mind, do you think the LAS is going to offer enough kind of specialization, or is that still not enough?
I'm not a huge fan of the LAS. I like lots of buttons. I come from games that have lots of abilities, lots of action bars. I like that kind of stuff. I am not yet sold on we'll call it tactical value of the LAS. I prefer, and again, common thread for me, you've seen it before, Des, I like player skill being the differentiator. So the ability to know what ability to use at what time, when it's most effective, when you can get the most bang for your buck, weaving things and abilities together, to me, that is a valuable thing in a game. And when you trim that down to just, 8 I think now, abilities on the active LAS. It limits that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It prevents that amount of flexibility and freedom for a player to really stand out and say, this one ability that I don't use very often, I'm going to do a clutch move with it and stand out. So with that being said, the LAS does allow some differentiation, but we've talked about in other channels before, I have a feeling that every different situation is eventually going to have a
You're
quote,
going to use
meta
the
build.
M word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to have, and it's just math, right? You know, at some point, people will learn the game. And Joppa has talked about different kinds of challenges where part of the challenge is the player understanding the game and knowing what the environments are. And eventually the players will understand that. They'll learn the dispositions, they'll learn the environments, they'll learn what the challenges are. And they'll figure out, when I'm here, when I'm facing this, I just use this LAS. So that limits the ability for the LAS to truly be a differentiation tool, which is why I like the idea of the mastery system.
At the far end game, right? Because
Yes.
the way this plays out is we're talking about when, you know, people have all the masteries, like they've decked out their entire character. One thing we didn't really get was like approximately the difference between like, and this is probably going to change, so I'm not surprised we didn't get this. But the difference between I just leveled to 50, about how much mastery have I, you know, acquired in that time, and how much do I have to go if I wanted to fully max everything out? And in that case, where everybody has everything, or, you know, the people that have really pushed to the top, they have everything, then we can get this kind of meta with the bars. But I would at least say up until that point, when people are still, they haven't maxed everything out, you know, it's going to be tempting to be like, well, technically this is the right ability, but I don't have mastery in it yet, and I do have mastery in this stuff, so hopefully this will make up for it. Like, do you think at least until we get to that final end game state, there might be some differentiation there?
I think I'll admit that there's the possibility of it. Excuse me. I'm not yet sold that there's going to be, at those lower levels, you know, before people get to 50 and are learning the game, that there is going to be that many true different options for what people are going to want to put on their LAS. And I'll use the Shaman, for example. Shaman is a healer, right? It has other stuff, but primarily when a Shaman is in a group, or you can use Cleric, when they're in that group, their focus is healing. So there are going to be certain abilities, in my mind, that are kind of just always going to be on the bar. You know, we know we need to have certain healing abilities. We're probably going to have cleanse, you know, different things that are going to be probably default in 90% of situations. And then you've got, we'll call it 2 or 3, and I'm pulling numbers out here, that may have some flexibility on the bar that are going to be specialized, unique scenario, region-driven abilities that I'm fighting X thing. I know they are weak to fire, or they have a specific resist that I'm going to want to have a debuff for, or something like that. So ultimately, and I'll say this is more of a fear than anything that I've confirmed, people will know, especially testers prior to the game going live, will know, like, this is kind of what you want to focus on, and they're going to put their mastery points there first. So while I admit there is potential for differentiation across the leveling process, I don't know that I think it'll be more ignorance driven than actual variety driven, but I don't know that for certain.
So this is where I would push into it and say that wouldn't essentially, like, by differentiation doesn't necessarily have, like, you know, create any inherent skill gaps or anything like that. That creates more knowledge gaps than anything else, and knowledge gaps can be basically fixed with as simple as going to Google, by going to Icy Veins, finding out what is the meta. And that seems to be an issue that happens with a lot of games that have specializations, because essentially it comes down to, like saying math. You have, this is the build to do. And you even have rotations based on that build, whether you have limited action sets or not. It comes down to solving a mathematical problem, where and once it's solved, everyone can just do the solved problem. I think part of the mastery system is it's not there to create these mathematical problems as much as a system that is there to enhance the things that are already being done. So your whole strategic planning is the world itself, and then the limited action set, which is knowing when to do things and knowing how to implement them in situations when the field of battle changes. And so I think like coming from EverQuest, where essentially you didn't have a limited action set, but you had limited actions most of the time, there was still, I mean, if you just think of like a complete heal rotation, that was one spell, but it was still very important to have skill involved when you were doing that skill, being able to make sure that you were doing it at the right time and things like that. So I think the lack of specialization, the concerns I can see is people having fewer options. So if you want to play a Dire Lord DPS, that's going to be more limiting than say a system like World of Warcraft, where you have the ability to play as a tank or a DPS. So it shrinks down class choice, I think, while enhancing class fantasy. And I think that would be my major concern of not having specialization, is you don't necessarily get to play the class perhaps the way you want to play, because when you look at the number of classes, it is kind of a limited number of classes. And so that lack of specialization, that's where I can see the biggest issue. More so than skill, more about like the ability to play the way you want to play, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I actually agree with that a lot. I'm a big fan of specialization, and I'll use the shaman as example. They've shown it, and even especially in the older streams where they really dived into some of the state manipulation and shaman coming through as, a dot and debuff, call it off spec. I know nobody likes that term, but that was kind of like their secondary role. So I've always kind of lobbied for truly embracing what the off spec of a class is, so that it may not be able to operate at 100% efficiency. Like, okay, shaman is a healer. If you want to operate at the top peak efficiency, you need to play as a healer. But the best way that I can think of is VR for a long time has talked about the situational value of things, where it's not so much that one piece of gear or one ability is always going to be the best in every scenario. You're going to, maybe this piece of ability or this piece of equipment has more value in a cold environment, or this spell has more value fighting these particular type of mobs. So I kind of wanted them to lean into that, where there is that quote unquote off spec, where there may truly be some value in bringing a dot or debuff focused shaman to this place. But as we've all kind of agreed, in today's day and age, eventually everybody's going to meta that out, right? Like, okay, well, when you go here, you kind of want to bring a debuff shaman. But I'm also, and Des, I know you see me preach on this before, I'm not a fan of letting the fact that people will quote unquote ruin the game on their own by metaing it out interfere with what I view as just good, fun design decisions. Like, people are going to ruin the game for themselves. We know that's going to happen. They're going to look up guides. They're going to follow meta builds. They're going to follow the path of least resistance. But if we just design around that and limit the potential of the game and the freedom of the world that we build and the freedom of the world that we engage with, and that just ends up in a worse MMO. If people want to ruin the game for themselves, fine. I'm not a huge hardcore endgame raider. I'm not going to be racing to any world first. I'm playing the game. Again, one of my big soapbox things is I want an immersive world. I want an engaging world. I want a virtual world that hits all those notes. And if sometimes that means to hit those notes, you don't get to play the meta thing, that's fine. Nobody's forcing you. As long as it's
as long as there's other stuff to do
played.
that
Right.
is fun.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. This is a game, right? You hit right on it. This is supposed to be fun. This isn't the formulas on how to win at life. This is a game, So I think you're exactly right. If they are designing a world that, I'm sure that they're seeing all the testing, and I'm sure that they know a lot, or are min-maxers themselves, the designers, and understand that kind of world. Yes, you're exactly right. We can't stop the people who want to do that, because they're going to, people are going to people.
Okay, I
So-
see a question from Joppa. I gotta bite at it. No, I am not postulating that having specs remove the threat of metas. I am postulating that the threat of a meta should not limit the possibility for specs. Like, just because people are going to meta this stuff doesn't mean we shouldn't still be able to be flexible in our character to have fun with it. You know, if I want to specialize in a subpar, and I'm using air quotes here, dot debuff focused shaman, if I want to play my character that way, I've heard before and we've talked about there will be, you know, abilities that will be on items that will influence certain skill lines, that will empower certain abilities. If I want to play the less optimal class that's fun to me and build it that way, I would love to have that choice. But just because people are going to meta it doesn't mean we shouldn't have the choice. But I do understand from dev time. Yeah.
So since you mentioned that, though, because I just want to point this out, because this actually came up literally as soon as we started streaming last weekend. You mentioned the dot debuff shaman, right? I had, I'm just kind of repeating, I guess, what the start of the stream was, but I was duoing with someone before we started the stream, and my bar was basically just dots, debuffs, and like one heal. And my kind of like, not even like push back on that, because again, by the end of the game, it's figured out, right? But on the way, if you were a solo player, well, there's one thing that this does totally enable. If you're a solo player and you want to lean into kind of what you're saying, like the dot debuff side, you could throw all your mastery points in that. And sure, you would not be great in a group, but you'd probably be extremely effective as a solo shaman all the way up until, you know, you hit end game and, you know, kind of do whatever you want there. So I think there's like a little bit of maybe not creativity, because it's, I don't know, it's not really, I don't think it's ever going to be set up for like real creativity, right? But maybe skill expression. How about that? Some skill expression. And I think it at least touches on that just a little bit without going the whole, well, you're a, you know, totem shaman and, you know, you've actually canceled out some of your kit. I don't know. I think it's leaning in that direction. It's not fully there, but it's something.
On that note, I do, that is probably my biggest complaint about shamans, is there's no totems. I just want to throw that out there in general.
I will admit, if we get some totems, I would be happy.
And I would love
so shaman's your class then, Finn?
Well, it's actually Bard. Bard is going to be my class,
right.
but shaman has been my entertainment while I wait for the bard to come. But yeah, it's I think players will still be able to stand out. And to what Joppa, I saw him put in chat, and what you made the comment on, you know, you can still put all those dot debuff abilities on your LAS. And the fact that the mastery system won't let you truly, quote, specialize, it's fine. I mean, it's not going to be a huge deal. I would have liked to have seen it. This is not a deal breaker for me. I'm not going to get all up in arms about it. It's not crazy. I would have liked to see the choice there where it's not the eventual everybody will have maxed masteries and it's just what I swap out on my LAS, but truly having some value in choosing, nope, I'm going to intentionally spend a, quote, limited amount of mastery points to become a dot debuff specialist. Mm-hmm. That's not the case. That's fine. If there is, and this may be one of those things we just don't know about, Joppa is I'm getting the impression that within other arenas, whether it be through gear, whether it be through, I don't know, who knows what they have planned, but there may be other paths to become more of that off-spec specialist. So he just made a comment. A shaman with fully mastered offensive abilities and debuffs, with gear chosen to enhance their dot damage, etc., would absolutely be a force to be reckoned with. So it sounds like there'll be other tools. So
yeah,
I brought it up before. Just because everything isn't geared that way doesn't mean the system's not still effective. So I'm glad to hear there will be other options to go in that direction. And
bringing it back to what Red started with was it's kind of a supplementary system in the first place. Mm-hmm. And I think this kind of outlines exactly why it's a supplementary thing and not something that defines your entire, you know, class or whatever. It just goes along with and kind of helps you lean into things, at least for now. kind of stacking on top of your gear and, other ways of progression. But
I mean, because I think that there's.
Oh, go Red.
Go ahead. Okay. What I was going to say is that essentially, when I think of specialization, there's like two different branches of specialization that I think of. I think of a specialization like the Path of Exile, the Elder Scrolls Online, Ultima Online type of specialization, which is
you're gonna have
essentially
Path of Exile mastery trees in
like
Pantheon.
essentially
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Essentially like a classless system where you basically build your own class. And one of the issues that I personally have with that is the lack of any kind of class fantasy with that, because you are essentially, and most people will build from the meta. And the problems with that is the broader you get, the bigger the gap gets between the meta and the average player, making it almost to be able to do anything, you have to get close to the meta. Because unfortunately, people in MMOs are going to be exclusionary. It's just how these games tend to work. And we have 2 decades of like proof of that.
Yeah.
And then the other side of that is kind of more like the World of Warcraft way of going about it, which is essentially like a class within a class, where classes had their own identity based off specialization trees. And those trees were like just an additional way to play a broad class. So essentially that way is just creating new choices of a way to play a class, but they are like a healer druid versus a tank druid is going to be 2 very different things, and it's almost
really
like
just a
completely
subclass,
different classes. Yeah. So I think that the mastery system is kind of like not like close to that. I think of the mastery system more along the lines of the way it works in EverQuest, where it's a supplementary system that adds more dopamine hits as you go about it and you go through it. And it increases your class identity. As I got more AAs as a Shadow Knight, I became more of a Shadow Knight. That's kind of, it just like increased the way that I connected with my class, and it gave me other things to strive for. And it did make me more powerful than, say, another Shadow Knight that didn't have things or had picked to go to prioritize things differently. Yeah, eventually we could all get to the same place, but the priorities were important.
It also, just to bring up something that was mentioned in the stream, was the ways you get mastery was outlined and expanded upon a little bit. And I'm really glad that they added this. And I'm sorry if I'm going to boot you in a second, though, just because we do have some other.
Hey, I'll hop off. But, y'all are fantastic. Thanks for the time.
Okay. Yeah. Here, I'll see you next time, man.
Thanks, Finn.
Yeah, thanks for popping on. Really appreciate it.
Good talking to you.
Y'all have a good night.
Night. I was going to kind of point out that so getting your Mastery XP from quests or from alternate things other than just when you're XPing regularly, I think is really brilliant, because it allows a person to it isn't like the ultimate twink thing to always be ahead of the curve, right? That's what you gear out your alternate character.
You're short-circuiting that to twink out your lower character and
right.
Such, yes.
And I would argue that there's another fantasy when it comes to that, where it is, because I totally did this in like EQ2, where you hit level 10, level 20 or something, and you just crank the XP all the way to AAs so that you can kind of like get more powerful than you should be at that level. And I see a little bit of that in this system. And again, it's not necessarily differentiating the class that you're playing. It's more of an expression of how you play the game, if that makes sense.
Well, you better be sure that if I'm a shaman, I'm going to be putting all my mastery into the Mantle of Mist, because because of myself, I want to play in groups. And and if I'm going to be a healer that's can handle groups and can handle, I need good HOTS. And if that's my main way of healing, as opposed to the cleric or another healer, I need to have those. I need to have good. I'm going to put all my mastery in HOTS. I'm going to put all my mastery in debuffs, probably. So
I want to highlight this one comment from Joppa before we move too far past it. Not only gear with direct stat modifiers, plus poison damage, plus nature damage, etc., but also attribute modifiers on abilities, i.e. Sting of the Hornet, modified by Constitution. So I've leaned into my Constitution stat more so than Healing Shaman, etc. these are ways, in addition to the LAS selection, to lean into the secondary role emphasis. So it does sound like there's a lot of thought process going into it, and it's a multifaceted system. It's not just the mastery system that is going to allow you to be like to maintain your class role, your class fantasy, but also have some choices, some thought process in how you are going about your character. And I remember that we were talking about a couple ones of these ago about special items too that had very like big impacts on you as a player too. So it sounds really good to me.
Yeah, it's kind of like eventually you could always assume that everyone's going to get to the same place by the end. But I think, if there's any game that's about the journey, it's Pantheon, right?
Yeah, it's necessary. It definitely widens out the play. I'm not shooting for the end so much. I'm definitely widening out as I can. And maybe I do focus on those things that get me points. Mastery points faster than other XP,
Yeah, it's a way to reward you without levels that still gives you progression, horizontally.
Yeah, that was actually a question I had as I was watching, is how, like, with the mastery points and each piece of experience giving you, like, the same amount, would that, is that something where they would incentivize going, like, killing a bunch of lower level things?
Yeah,
for example,
I thought the same thing. I was like, wait, every XP event gives you mastery? I'm like, oh, we're going to be AoE farming?
And I'm not even necessarily saying that's a bad thing. I'm just, it was an initial thought that came up, is, it might allow things to, for you to figure out how you want to grind and things like that. And we don't know yet how it's going to play out with, will you be kind of ready when you get to max level, or is it worth going back and grinding and stuff like that? But it was just a thought that came up.
Well, that was a question I had, was how fungible are the mastery points? Can I just get really good at jumping and then get some mastery points and then put that into my, premier skills?
Okay, this is where I wanted, like, I was going to say this, but I really, really hope there's some consideration for putting the general mastery and the class mastery as separate things, because I like the idea of general mastery being something you can work on, whereas I would feel need to do the class mastery. Like, I would feel like it's a very important thing to do. Mm-hmm. So I'd have to focus on finishing that first before shifting over to general mastery. So I hope that there's some consideration of splitting them out. Just I think it'd be fun, for crafting and harvesting and jumping.
I actually totally disagree. Because I look at the game as really like this whole experience, like crafting and adventuring. I still like the idea of it's not necessarily separate, because they're always communicating with each other and have reliances on each other. And so to me, I actually really like the idea of a character literally leaning into crafting, gathering their more like practical stats, like endurance, so they can get around, before investing a lot into their adventuring side. It literally makes it so that you could make a crafting character, and that's really exciting to me.
It is. Yes, I know. I'm torn there though, because if I'm really good at making a hammer, that doesn't mean I'm great at
using it.
using healing spells. Maybe I'm right. Yeah, maybe really good at jumping. Yes, that is the Morrowind approach, Mr. C. Anyway, go ahead.
I was just like, ManOfRohan, think of EverQuest 2. I mean, there was, you focused on, you built up your crafting, and you built up your leveling, and you built them up separately. And I think the inclusion of crafting and harvesting is going to make people make some difficult decisions. And difficult decisions aren't a bad thing, but I just think of them as so separate, and like the thing that you can use to kind of avoid this feeling of like the jack of all trades type thing is time investment. If they're separate, they're still going to take time to do things. But that was my initial thought, is I like the idea of. I mean, I come from playing games like Ultima Online and stuff like that, where everything you did built up skills and stuff. So
Multiple
I
at the
liked,
same time. Like,
yeah, and I like
gotcha.
so whatever you're focusing on. So if I want to spend one day working on mastery of not dying in the near death state faster, for example, I don't think it's a thing, but then I want to focus on that and build that up. But I may not be able to do that because I need to get the extra percentage of damage to my mainline class skills first. So it kind of, in some ways, removes the choice by making the choice too slanted towards one thing. Because I mean, even Joppa was saying that the main thing is the class mastery. So
for sure,
the idea of someone picking the secondary mastery, like it doesn't seem like it's as much a choice as that's the bad choice.
So
does that make sense?
That's kind of the natural thing that I love, though, is that you will end up investing in the gameplay that you do mostly. And again, it just further differentiates why your character is different than someone else. Like ManOfRohan suggested that as a shaman, he'd put a lot of points into healing and basically anything that makes him more effective in a group, while we talked earlier about a shaman that invested in soloing. And to me, I don't see like crafting and like general stuff being any different. It's just what is important to me. And that's, I think, something that maybe in the end, everyone, ends up with everything, but on the way, it does make you feel different if you are level, 20 or something, and maybe you don't have crazy mastery or whatever, but maybe you're a quester and you've done all these quests and you are adequate in groups, but also maintaining a healthy crafting thing on the side. So yeah, a lot of I like that you brought it up and that I disagree, though. It's definitely something I'm sure VR is going to have to think about.
Oh, for sure. And currently it's the way you want it. So
currently, yeah. So I'm not in any rush to change it, but I do think you bring up a good point, and I think there's probably a lot of people that would agree with you that you should just get a point for either instead of, or both. I mean, whenever you gain one, or however that works out. But I realized that this is a show where we bring in people from the green room. So sorry everyone for all the monologuing tonight, but
just too many things to think about and talk about. So really, sorry about that.
I mean, we knew this was going to be a big one, right? So, but Sarah was desiring to hop in first this time. So go ahead and unmute and I'll pop you in here. All right. Hey, hello.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Sarah.
Good evening.
I'm a little bit blah tonight, so apologies ahead of time for being blah and not my usual, yippy self.
Oh. But you had thoughts, though, right?
I always have thoughts. They just don't always make sense or relate to what we're talking about. But the one thought that I did have was to kind of go back to like what Finn was saying, and it was touched on already, but when he was first talking about like being able to specialize and stuff and his concerns with like the LAS and mastery, this like what Pantheon and my impression of Pantheon is that what they are really rewarding and trying to encourage is exploration and playing the game. So I feel like there's going to be a lot more emphasis and reward on doing that than just like the things that you already have access to, like the mastery points that you just get anyway. So how are you going to be able to specialize your character by the things that you're able to go loot, like the mobs that you're able to kill, the drops that you're going to get, the things that you're going to find, like spells or gear or whatever. How I feel like the emphasis will be more on those types of things to be able to differentiate your character versus like, a mastery system that everybody's going to have.
Yeah, the rare world drop is one of those ways to gain the point, to gain a shard, and you can even trade those.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that I'm sure Drax thinking about that.
Oh, he's already got spreadsheets ready to go
Oh,
to watch the pricing.
I don't think Drac heard anything else, but he may have already known. But it's the crits
I think
from
for the
Fireball
fireballs.
and crits. Yeah.
Itty bitty
Better
living space
firebolt
in your wizard
equals more
tower,
money.
Jack. Yeah,
I like what
said.
Sav said. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes players more reliant on just being good players. And I was going to kind of point this out. I'm sure everybody kind of feels the same. Well, not I'm sure, but I would think after playing MMOs for a while, a lot of folks know that the end game currency is knowledge in most games. As long as you know how to do everything because you've had the experience. We all know people from our MMO careers that I think the current phrase is boosted, where they end up with a max level character and have no idea what the heck they're doing. Either because the game made it super easy for them to get to max, or they bought a character or something, right? And we've identified that, and I think Pantheon is basically just adding more layers. But the mastery system, I think, is really, as Jop kind of said, it's like a supplementary thing. It's not really meant to be the main differentiator, right? The main differentiator is the knowledge, knowing how to get around your situation.
I think the main differentiator of this is going to be the class. And I think that's one thing that when we talk more about mastery and things like that, we're kind of moving away from what one of the bases, and one of the reasons like I actually liked the idea of Pantheon was class roles and class fantasy, and this idea that the class you're playing is the class you're playing, because that's something that's been moving away from in MMOs. You go into the classless systems and things like that. The whole point is that the class you pick, you're picking it for the role. So I think that's why that's why I liked what Joppa was saying about the mastery system is reinforcing that. Like it's reinforcing the class that you are. You notice like the wizard, it was extra DPS. The enchanter example was extra crowd control. It's reinforcing the role of the class that you picked.
That's actually we were talking about that a little bit. A similar topic on the raid on Tuesday, or before the raid when I was taking 30 minutes for tech. Anyway, we were talking about how like back in original EQ, like when you picked a race or a class, you had a starting city that you would choose or would be in, and then you didn't worry about the fact that you couldn't get over to, like, if you were a Kelothan ranger, that you couldn't go play in like the evil races and cities. That wasn't something that you were upset about, or like that you felt like you were missing out on because you couldn't get to those areas. That was just like, that's what you chose. That's that's the character that you chose. That's the fantasy that you chose. Is like you're playing the good guy. So no, you're not going to go hang out in the bad guy city. And games have gone away from that so much. And yeah, like Pantheon is encouraging getting back to that level of like fantasy play. And that's one of the things I'm really drawn to about it.
I didn't even know there was a bad guy city when I started. I only knew there was Greater Fadark. Yeah. I thought that was the only zone in the whole game, and I'm serious.
I ran into, I can't remember which city it was, but I knew that there were bad ones, but I didn't know that I was going into a bad one, and I ran right in there and got murdered. So, yeah.
I did want to throw something in here since Minus is in chat. And ManOfRohan, you pointed this out during the stream. Was the one really, really, really great thing that they did in this stream that I've been a bit critical of over the last few weeks is giving context and defining things. And they did so good with that this stream. You know, abilities popped up and they're like, hey, let's tell everyone what this ability does, because, not everyone might know. And I just have to give serious props for all of that, whether that was intentional or not. Like, that's exactly the kind of stuff that I've been like trying to push to do. And it was executed really great this stream. So just want to throw that.
I want to thank the devs for being in chat and providing additional information, even more so than they did in their own stream, because it elaborated even further and helped clarify stuff for me that I wasn't 100% getting in their stream. So you guys are awesome for not only doing the stream that you're doing, but then coming to hang out with us over here. You guys are just the best.
Well, does it feel
Absolutely.
like to anyone else that information is coming a lot faster and it's a lot more free than it has been in the past? And I think the chickens are kind of coming home to roost as momentum is starting in a good way, you know.
I mean, I was
That's
pretty
usually been the bad way,
blown.
but
We
Like,
just had like 13 bean soup in that stream. It was awesome.
nuts. Yeah.
I was pretty mind blown that they kind of dropped that. Yeah, mastery is going to be back on the menu for PA testing, and like they've talked about mastery being off for a long time, and even though we were talking about mastery this month, I knew it was going to be a big one, but I had no expectation that we were switching that back on. And I mean, it sounds like not all of it is in there yet, but I mean, that is, as a tester, and I know I'm so sorry, guys, like, but as a tester, I am incredibly excited, and that was so unexpected. So that's the way to do a bean drop right there.
Right.
And
And
then
backstab.
hopefully we'll be able to show it off in a stream again soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know your favorite class is not in there, but is there something you were extra excited about for the classes that were identified? Anything like that?
I mean, I feel like I sound like a broken record, but I still just love how they're giving each class and every aspect of this game so much ability to like make choices, and that's where I feel like the differentiation comes from. They're giving the players the ability to like make their choices to play in the way that we want to play. And I know the argument was made that mastery kind of limits that, and I disagree. I feel like it's opening that up, because as far as like conjecture, so yeah, if we can put into general versus class stuff, or like how much we can kind of dive into that. But like I said something silly in chat, but can I put all of my mastery points in the beginning into like fall damage and climbing, so that I could be like the most awesomest explorer there is and jump off cliffs and climb back up and like be able to do that, and like I'm imagining Superman now or something. I don't know, but
Well,
anyway,
if they allow you to get mastery like outside of just XP events, as they put it, it would totally allow you to have, I mean, the level 1 sprinter, like character
Right.
that's just all in on the general stats that give you mobility. And that's just super fun. I hope
Right.
that that's what they were getting at. I hope there are non-XP ways to get mastery, but yeah, that's it. That makes that's the kind of memorable stuff, right? Like,
I feel like it's giving you the ability to play the game you want to play, the way you want to play it. So yeah, like I would totally put into like anything that enhanced my ability to explore and climb all the things. That's what I would do first, and that's the fact that that's even a possibility in this game, even if it's not the way they go or the final version of it. The fact that that's something that's being considered makes me very excited.
yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
expression. I like
Yeah.
it. Anything
Just
else, Sarah? Or sorry, Red.
I was going to say, just to kind of wrap up everything with a bow with class identity and the mastery system, and the point of the mastery system reinforcing your class identity. I'm not going to play a paladin when I really just want to play a dire lord. I mean, I'm not Nathan Napalm, I actually want to. I'm like playing the class, picking the class that I want to play. I'm making that decision like from the outset that's what I want to do. And so the idea, like the downside for me of specializations would be something like you pick a class because of the role it has, but a specialization becomes the meta of that class. So you start losing out on the role that you picked it for because the specialization has surpassed it. So that's one of the fears that I would have if there had been specializations.
On
example
that
that
note,
would be
sorry,
games.
I want to point this out because it might not be something that everybody thinks about, but in those kind of systems, you can think of all of the dev time that goes into making all of those different specs and, you know, branches of trees and stuff that a majority of players just don't use. Where in this system, eventually all of that dev time is used. Just throwing that out there.
Cool.
I don't think we lost Red's audio. I think Desryn just interrupted him. And
I'm
that-
sorry,
Okay, 'cause
Red.
It totally looked like
No, we're
Red
good.
was still talking for a minute and then didn't hear him.
Des is super chatty. I like it.
I'm hyped, man. I'm hyped. Feeling good.
I loved all the deep dive. I know I said last week or whatever that I'm not a big numbers guy, but I like when it's done in this kind of manner. They took one spell and talked about each how it got better. I love some of the. I'm very happy. Yes, minus that backstab is back, but things like feign death being allowed to rest while in feign death with the highest mastery. You know.
Yep.
And,
you mean Fiend
you know,
Death?
Fiendeth, I mean. Yes, you know, and there was the third level. I mean, the two make sense, obviously getting better, but that third level on each one of those was pretty darn cool for every single one.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Agreed.
love it.
Well, anything else, Sarah, before we move?
No, I thought that my contribution to this was going to be like 2 seconds. So thanks for bringing me in, guys. It's always fun to hang out.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Sarah.
So I gotta point this out in chat. Are we getting like new merch from VR for Fiend Death?
If they make a Fiend Death
shirts,
if they make a Fiend Death shirt, I will buy one.
it'll
100%.
single-handedly fund us to launch if we just have some Fiend Death merch.
100%. Especially if it's like I don't know, like wife beater. Like I don't know. I'm trying to think of what the equivalent to a gi is for modern society.
You can't say that anymore. It's spouse assaulter. You can't say
okay.
wife
Sorry.
beater anymore.
Well, just to remind everybody that's still here, we have a green room. There's only 2 more people in here. So if you want to get on the show, have a chat, bring your thoughts. There should be a link to our Discord in the pinned chat, and hop on in here. Hop in the green room. They might test your mic, and then we pop you in, and boom, we have a discussion. We are very good at extrapolating, as it seems. So I'd love to see some more people. Yeah. To everyone's chagrin. So I was thinking we get Mr. C next. Does this sound good?
Awesome.
All right, Mr. C. I see you're already unmuted, so I'm just gonna grab you here. Hopefully you're there. Hey, Mr. C.
Hey, Mr. C.
So, what are you thinking, bud?
You know, they should just get rid of the mastery system.
Oh no.
Is this? Are you faking this out again?
I'm the lord of fake outs.
The spicy take. Really though,
No,
like,
I think-
what are you thinking?
I think it's good. Because I hate it in MMOs where you hit level cap and it's just like, all right, I'm killing stuff and I would be getting experience, but it currently just goes to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
What?
And
Sorry. What do you mean by that? Maybe I misunderstood you there, but
like for example, like on a TLP that's in classic that doesn't have AAs in yet, if you hit level cap and you like kill something, you don't get anything.
Yeah. You kind of feel like you're just wasting kills or wasting time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on the same page.
You're getting more loot than you are experience or gain in the long run.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a good system. Someone on the stream, they were trolling, but it made me think like, is this just EverQuest AAs? And to that I say not really. It takes a lot from it.
I mean, honestly, it's almost more like EverQuest 2 AAs from what I've seen.
No.
Than EverQuest AAs. No, because EverQuest 2 AAs they're a tree that's built up class wise, and you get them as you progress. Whereas EverQuest AAs were an additional end game extender, right? So EverQuest 2 AAs were building up your class as you go. I mean, not when they're first launched.
Oh, I see.
That's more now.
So that element of them, I see.
Yeah, so that element, yeah, and that's where like the thing ends. But I like what Mr. Cottleshire is saying here, because it does add. It's like it's secondary. It's another reason to log in and do things. It's another way to build your character beyond gear or things like that. And that's kind of what I'm getting the vibe of Pantheon is. There's going to be multiple ways to build up your character, whether it's acclimation, leveling, there's exploration, taming, like all different kinds of things that you can build towards.
Can I point out something that I just realized is potentially genius if this is an intended consequence for how they calculate the XP? And if Jop is still in the chat, I wonder if he can confirm this, but did you notice that the way that mastery is calculated has no influence from the amount of XP that you get, which means it's no longer the most optimal thing to rush till max level and then get your AAs because you're getting more XP.
Mm-hmm.
There's no difference now.
Well, that, and also the whole thing where like you could rush to max level, but you won't have climbing. You probably won't have any good weapon skills.
Yeah.
You won't have any good gear. In fact, you'll be pretty gimped.
Right. It's kind of another mechanic that disincentivizes power leveling, which I mean, I'm all for. But.
Yeah.
But to kind of look at the other end of it, Joppa brought this up, and I was relieved when he did, because this was the part of EverQuest that I didn't like. I liked the AAs from EverQuest, but I didn't like that you needed max AAs. You needed 4,000 AAs to be able to do anything. And I remember back when I played EverQuest, and this was before the auto grant system, and I only had like 1,000, and I was like, hey, I want to raid. And they're like, go grind 3,000 more AAs and then talk to us. And then I stopped playing.
On one hand, that's actually made so much better with this system in certain situations, because as long as you've ranked up all of your, let's say, like whatever your main LAS setup is, you could at least fully participate in some raids.
This just sounds like a way that Drac is going to extort people to raid with Pantheon Plus. Like, okay, you can raid with us, but you need this many mastery points, and to get that many mastery points, I actually still have this stock available, but the stock is getting kind of low because there's a lot of new raiders, so the price has increased. Like this, that's the next logical step here,
right? But the stock hasn't decreased. He's just
he just has them all.
Plenty.
Oh no, but that's hush hush.
Yeah, he has all the shards is all.
Drac heard exactly two things. You can trade mastery shards and wizards have crits. The rest of the stream may as well have not existed.
Absolutely.
But ironically, still a great stream for Drac. So, I mean.
Yeah. Absolute banger.
Anything else, Mr. C?
This was brought up on the chat also, and I was curious. I don't know if this was answered, but I'm curious. Will weapon techniques also have mastery related things to them?
I would assume so, but that's a great question.
Great question.
Huh.
Because I don't know the weapon techniques offhand, but if I would assume if I'm using like dagger stab, whatever the hell it's called, and that's my go-to, then I'm really gonna want to see how far I can push that ability and add more to the group.
Yeah, it's stumped us, I think.
It seems like such an obvious thing that I did not even think that might be a thing. Like I said, I assume that they are going to be in for techniques, but hopefully that gets clarified.
But, no one says mastery has to fit in every single thing you can do. That could just be the weapon techniques are just another way to progress. So maybe. I definitely don't know.
I would like there to be. I'll give that 2 cents. I would like there to be.
Yeah, way to grow and way to differentiate yourself. Sure, I agree, but I don't know if that needs to be a part of the mastery pool. I don't know how many we're going to be getting total. I mean, Joppa did mention 100, but I don't know if that's 100 based on just the mastery experience, and you can get more than that because of quest cast rewards or rare world drop.
I thought that was like a bar until you get your next point. I think that's what he was describing. 'Cause you're talking about the second bar in the UI that he mentioned, right? That's like, when it gets to 100.
Oh, okay.
If you're talking about that, then I'm pretty sure that's okay. I'm not that crazy.
Well, but still, there's going to be a mastery pool, and spreading out that out to many different places to spend. I mean, is a strategy for gameplay and progression for sure, but that just limits the amount of places you can put it. And maybe that restraint makes the game more fun. I don't know. We'll see.
Indeed.
I mean, another thing is that are there different mastery points or are they all the same? I don't know if they answered that either.
They go up in cost.
I meant like branch, like crafting, character,
like general to combat or whatever. Yeah,
all those are.
I was gonna say, as of right now, that was the disagreement that Des and I had. As of right now, they aren't, right? But my disagreement was that they should be. But Des was saying that they shouldn't be.
There you go, Desryn.
There's our answer. Choppa in the chat. Techniques will have mastery upgrades as well. Boom. There it is. Awesome.
Mystery
Thanks, Choppa. Appreciate it. Any last bits before we get Fate in here, Mr. C?
I think that should about cover it.
Awesome, man. I love having you as a regular.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, keep coming back. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you can have my spot, Mr. Cottleshire.
That's too much pressure. I can't handle it.
Red is always he's getting assailed by 1 or 2 life factors, like it's thunderstorming right now, right? Or something.
It is a thunderstorm.
Yeah.
Or internet outage. Yeah.
I've actually got a thing made just in case Red ever actually drops out. I'm pretty proud of it, but you guys will only see it if he ever drops out.
That makes me want to drop out just so I can see it, though.
Nope. It has to be natural causes.
But I'll fiend deeth.
Fiend deeth. You'll fiend.
Yeah, and you'll be medding while you're on the floor.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was such a good mastery. Anyway, okay. All right, let's get Fate in here. Again, thanks a bunch, Mr. C. See you next time.
No problem. Later.
All right. As soon as her mic is undone, I'll grab her. But yeah, some of those third masteries were really, really cool without essentially like fundamentally changing the ability. I think that was really great.
Without making that Dire Lord more like a paladin.
Exactly.
We don't want that. Yeah.
Well, hey Fate, welcome in.
Hey Fate.
Hey Fate.
How's it going?
Good.
Excellent.
Fairly small green room considering the size of the beans dropped, but it happens.
And the length of time y'all have talked.
I was about to say it, but Fate
Shane, I was thinking the exact same thing. Let's shut up a little bit more so we can get more people talking.
Speaking of talking, that something Joppa did a couple of times. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but something Joppa did a couple of times tonight, where he'd get a question and he'd say yes, and then he'd pause for long enough that I thought he was just going to leave it at that, and then he'd start talking again.
Thank goodness.
I laughed each time. Yeah, that was funny.
I'm like, is he just going to leave it there? No, okay.
Yes. I feel like you could ask Joppa, like, how many classes are in Pantheon? He's going to be like, yes.
Yes.
All right, Fate, what are your thoughts?
So ability-wise, that they gave us like a little snippet of abilities and their masteries. There were no surprises, which is actually something that I like. Like all of the upgrades were like, yes, that's something that like I would want to see on an ability. And it's like that's what you want. This is not a time to be like getting weird surprises about like, oh, it's fire spell. You can get a mastery to make it do ice damage. It's like, well,
Right.
I got an ice line. What are you talking about here? So it was all like, I don't want to call it basic because it wasn't basic stuff, but it was all like expected stuff. It's like exactly what I want out of a system like this.
Definitely makes it more powerful for each point, which I mean sounds obvious, but
you mean they weren't copying? They weren't copying off of the draft magic cards for the skills that are going on here.
What a great plug!
Those are crazy.
There you go.
We're getting very close to the draft.
2 more cards while we've been talking. So
excellent.
Oh, I'll have to check on those.
Yeah.
So Fate, what's your class of choice?
Rogue. So it's excited to hear Backstab coming back.
Yes.
It's a. They've talked about it in the past. If they keep up with it, I think they've said before that they're not going to tie it to a dagger, like you've seen in other games. So they're going to call it Backstab.
If they stick with that.
Yeah. They've said that in the past, so we'll see if they stick with that or not. But
yeah, well, I mean, if it's a technique, I don't know if it is, but techniques can be weapon specific, right?
Right. Well, the weapon techniques and the class techniques, I don't know.
Maybe back.
Are we gonna I wonder if a mace wielding rogue can backstab. That would hurt.
You can stab with a mace.
They're stabby.
Stabby enough.
You just gotta angle it right.
Angle it right.
Yeah. I mean, I personally would prefer. I would be totally fine if it was dagger only. It is called backstab after all.
Yeah. Yeah, I would be too. Honestly.
And that could be part of the trade-off. Is like, well, these other weapons, maybe they're a little stronger, swords or axes or whatever. But if you're using daggers, you got backstab. And it's like a rogue-only dagger weapon, a dagger weapon technique.
Yeah, and those totally exist. A lot of the techniques are more than just per weapon. It's like per weapon and per class, or there can be any mix of those to make a technique. So I like it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would assume the blackjack. I'm sorry, but I would assume that. Oh, here we go.
Yep.
Backstab will be the technique. If wielding one-hand, two-handed piercing weapons.
Two-handed piercing. Oh.
Waylay will be the technique of wielding, slashing, or blunt weapons.
Oh, nice little bean.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Waylay, I haven't heard of Waylay before. Do you guys remember them talking about that at any point?
I mean, I don't recall it off the top of my head, but
I don't. Yeah. Awesome. But yeah, I was just saying blackjack is that's definitely a blunt kind of skill. So anyway, yeah, I think
it's almost like you've played EverQuest 2 before, ManOfRohan.
Yeah.
The other thing, so that's actually something you guys said, offhanded comment from, I think it was from RedBeard, and you guys mentioned like expansion of the mastery system, and I like actually
where this is going already.
If masteries are mostly tied to abilities and techniques, where is there room for expansion?
If you guys don't jump in, I'm gonna go crazy.
So like, are you talking like in general?
Yes. Yeah. Like however many years down the line after launch, it's you've had all this time. You've gotten maxed out masteries and all your abilities. So you only have a certain number of abilities, and you can only have a certain number of points spent on those abilities. And then now a new expansion comes out, and you get 10 more levels.
So
the abilities are the masteries are per ability line. So you have your fireball line, you have your AoE line, etc. Even if they give you new versions of those abilities, the mastery should still be applying to them.
Mhm.
So are they just going to keep giving you more, like Minus said, new abilities? That's ability bloat. You've already got a limited action set. Are they going to give you just keep giving you more and more and more choices to pit on that 12
Well,
slots that you
What
have?
if what
the
if
other
what
thing
if
he
you had
said
a
was
mastery? Oh, go ahead, Des.
the other thing he said was tier 4, because
Mhm.
currently we have 3 ranks in each pump.
Oh,
Mhm.
there you go. Ooh, okay. I like that. That's a
That
good
would be
answer.
quite an expansion.
That's a much better answer than new abilities, because new abilities just gives you, well, what is that? That just is going to just bloat the game up to the point of where, like, what do I do now? I have like 3 different versions of a fire AOE, like, where before I only had one.
Yeah. Was that Red? Were you going to say something though?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna think. I mean, there's plenty of ways you could expand upon mastery. Like, I don't know that that's necessarily like that. It's all like theoretical, right? But you could expand it upon different ways that it's already going. You could just like adding percentage points or raw data. You could add things like innovative thinking, like maybe you have a mastery point for a specific skill for a specific class that once that skill is used, it allows the refresh of a skill that is not on your limited action set, right? So you can throw in an extra skill through that mastery point, or just adding in secondary attributes like we had with the firebolt. You had the snare added in. What if and then after that you added the vulnerability? Things like that,
Yep.
or ways to counter specific mastery points that help you counter different. I'm blanking on the name of the oh, why am I blanking on this? The AI, essentially, the NPC AI, that allows you to maybe
Dispositions?
counter that dispositions, like things that like a different mastery points that can impact different parts of the game. But I think the more you get into that, the more you start thinking about it no longer being a secondary system, which is a little bit too much, I think. But
Mhm.
You guys, don't
just to
worry.
answer your question.
They're not going to do any new. They're just going to save the release of the Necromancer and the Bard till the first expansion.
Maybe.
Don't worry.
I'm out. I'm done.
That is such
Well, that
a
was
great...
actually that was
Sorry.
a good question. I had a good question though, because I wanted to get. I completely forgot about this. Thank you, ManOfRohan, for reminding me. Very important question about backstab is: will I need to give my necromancer pet a dagger for it to backstab? That is the important question.
Ooh.
You're assuming that
it's
you
a
have a
rogue
pet.
and not a warrior or a monk.
Or can I just make like resurrect Minus as my necromancer pet and destroy things,
Oh.
except bears?
It's such a great topic, though, because even though mastery is a supplemental side of the game, it is a path of progression. And whenever there's progression, there's like the opportunity for bloat. And we jokingly talked about it earlier, but whenever you have this path of progression, there's got to be a way to slow down bloat. And I think this actually creates a lot of opportunities for combating bloat as the game continues on. Again, they want the game to be 10 plus years, thriving, and you can't do that by just constantly adding and increasing power. But I know Finn was like joking about using mastery for an extra slot, but interestingly, that made me think who says you can have to use mastery for skills either? They have plenty of other paths that you might be able to spend mastery points on when they get to the point where a large portion of the player base is filled up. They've gotten all of their mastery points and an expansion comes out and maybe they don't want to add a tier 4 yet, because that would add potentially a little bit of power creep. But they could do other very useful things that might not necessarily increase the power of your character, but increase the utility of it to combat certain, mechanics for high-end stuff. Yeah, they could totally expand on it. I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm. they could start shifting away from abilities or away from combat abilities into climbing abilities, into crafting abilities, and into other things. I mean,
Yeah.
vision.
Oh my gosh, Fate.
Oh,
I know this is like total inside knowledge, but me and Fate have had like a almost not a constant conversation about seeing in the
Frequent
dark.
discussion about.
that's one reason
Vision.
I never want to be a human. That's at least one reason, because they
Mhm.
stink at seeing things.
Well,
They're also boring.
oh my
and
gosh.
of course, masteries into keeper stuff, which they have said before.
Right.
Keepers will have abilities. They will have
Yeah.
actual
Yeah.
abilities that you can use in combat.
Yeah, totally can apply too. I see no reason why it wouldn't, especially because as a keeper, you're probably going to do some quests. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that discussion's coming to a PTV near us sometime soon.
Be quite nice to learn how keeper works, how you level it up. How does it tie into perception?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of abilities a keeper might have? Maybe to identify dispositions or counter dispositions, perhaps, or
As much info as we got,
Yeah.
it still feels like there's the rabbit hole goes so much deeper when you think about it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Always
Isn't that how we feel like after any one of these? It just feels like
yeah.
even like we get a ton of information and then we still feel like, yeah, but there's all these questions.
And
I think that's
those
kind
are
of by
very
design.
complex.
I mean,
They
yeah.
only talked about one ability for half of the classes, each for
Mhm.
half of the classes. There's still
Yeah.
many, many, many more to think about and talk about and work together in balancing. So
Mhm.
good luck, VR. It's going to be a big job.
No kidding.
Not that you
I'm
don't
not-
know that already, but
Not envious.
Well,
I
any
also-
okay.
Minus.
Sure.
ahead.
Yeah. Just one more thing before we wrap up real quick. I threw it out in the chat when it happened, and I know Des, you jumped on it. But what do Red and ManOfRohan think about the possibility of, like, because Joppa mentioned quest experience, but
Mhm.
what if the quests aren't giving you adventuring experience, but are giving you other kind of experience instead, such as keeper experience, or maybe possibly even crafting and gathering experience?
I really
So-
hope so. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, so I mean, I personally, I started, with EverQuest before like questing was a thing. It's like the weirdest name ever for a game that had very few quests that mattered.
Mhm.
And I really dislike the way that things have gone with questing being the way to level. I think questing itself can be its own thing, and having quests have value beyond leveling your character, I think would be a great thing. And quests having mastery experience is a great way to incentivize doing it beyond gear and things like that, making it worthwhile to do, even if it's not the primary thing. Which to me, I like dungeon delving, I like grouping and grinding, and that's my personal favorite way to level. So I'd like the idea of quests not necessarily having, if they have experience, not being like the most experience or something like that. I like that mastery experience would be from them.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, I think I think in general, everything you do in a game gives you experience towards something.
Mhm.
It may not be an XP that is paying towards your levels, but I mean, just in the word quest, I'm questing, I'm learning new things, and I think that's exactly why I would want to get mastery experience, because I'm mastering something by experiencing. They talk about you master things at 10,000 hours of whatever you do. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's you just think about that time. So just as an analog there. But because you're right, what has become today is a quest is really just a task, and if you get experience for it, and like I just have to do these quests, and that's why quest subs happen. It was just an outgrowth of people wanting to get a lot more experience, so they just grouped it all together because it was easier. So that shouldn't be the way quests are, because a quest should be a quest. You call it a quest. I should be going and finding things out and having to go adventure somewhere and having to go do whatever, and not just deliver 5 rat skins to someone.
Bare asses.
That is a task that someone may want me to do, and maybe I get some money. But what did I learn really, besides I know how to kill a few more rats? I got a little experience by killing them, sure, but I shouldn't, anyway.
Yeah,
I
can ramble for a long time.
Exactly. I was about to say we're probably getting outside of the scope of the the mastery system, and I'm sure we could linger on this subject for a while, or at least I could, but you guys are probably not needing that at this point.
Well, that's me. I always like to take things off topic.
Well, good job. You hit a pressure point for me for sure.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah. Is that it, Fate?
Yeah.
Shall we let the
Sure.
people sleep?
Never.
Never.
Well,
All right,
thanks for joining once again.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
Okay.
Fate.
Yep. Have a good night, all.
Sir
Good
Shire.
night.
But Warrior of Light, the troops need you to make stew to raise morale.
Right?
Warrior of Light.
Like tasks. We could call those tasks. They can be minor, whatever, thingamabobs. Don't call that a quest.
Yeah,
Making
agreed.
lunch is not a quest. I mean, it feels like it sometimes, but it's not.
I have to find that
All
perfect
right.
spice. Yeah.
Well, any last thoughts, guys? I think I'm actually going to try to raid someone tonight if I can find any channels. If you guys know anyone, like maybe in the small MMO community that would be worth raiding, just let me know. But go ahead, ManOfRohan. Ending thoughts.
Ending thoughts are: I thought that tonight was a perfect example of a PTV, and I think looking forward to kind of diving deep on the systems of the game is what I really want to hear about during PTV. So very happy with tonight's information and again the momentum of the game happening and being developed and the information coming at a faster tick is awesome. So that's it.
Nice.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, maybe it's just I just feel it's all just kind of like everything is coming faster, like more information, like ManOfRohan saying, but it's coming faster. And I was sitting back and thinking for a second, like, there's 2 streams this month. There's 2 streams every month. There's an alpha test or a pre-alpha test this month. Like there's so much information coming out because there's so much being produced. There's so much content going out there. There's the class refresh and things like that. And then seeing the game and getting to see so much gameplay is just really reinvigorated my interest in playing the game, and I think that's great. I think it's coming at a decent pace where it's not overhyping it either. It's not super flashy. It's just a lot of good, solid information that just grounds the game and makes it feel more real and makes the hope come up a little bit that we're progressing. So
right.
Yep. It's like stuff is just coming together. That's kind of how it feels. Mastery being back in, and again, it's not like we're not just talking about it this time. It's in the game. So big win for VR. Very legit. Right. And as more stuff like this happens and starts connecting the dots, and the game's going to feel more whole and get more people excited to play it. So I actually think I'm going to raid Level Up Larry. I remember going to his stream, but it was a lot of fun. And so I'm going to start that. But while I get that going, say goodbye to the people.
See you guys.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
See you next time.
PantheonMMO.com.
Bye, guys. Yeah, PantheonMMO.com.